Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter at RealBirdLawyer. Here with me, as always, my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Witt. What's going on this fine June afternoon?
Oh, no pre-show riff for us today. We've got to get the show knocked out so we can go back to arguing with people on Twitter, which is what we do best.
Yeah, I mean, you called it. We were doing the pre-show, and you were trying to talk to me and trying to engage me.
You had nothing to say.
Just dead silent. And I was like, yeah. And it was because I was arguing Tom Brady fans online. But you know what? I gracefully bowed out. I said, look, I got to go do the podcast for a little bit. So, I'll circle back to this conversation later. And, if they don't bring it back up, I don't have to go back into that conversation. It's been a boring conversation anyway. Tom Brady fans are berserk. We may hear more about them later in this show. But first, let's tell you about our personal sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use our promo code SUNNY, SUNNY. You know the drill. It's daily fantasy, it's draft. It's draft style. It's best ball. Get on there, draft your teams. It's fun. And speaking of fantasy, we are still looking to fill a few spots in our fantasy league. We've got several spots filled. Dynasty League is all filled up. Cutthroat League is filling up, and Redraft League is filling up. We still have a few more spaces in each of those two leagues. So if you're interested, DM Taylor, or send us a message on Discord, or email us at itsalwayssunny@chiefskingdom.com. Rank your league preferences at gmail.com. Thank you. Yes. And that's it. I mean, what else do we have to say about that?
I gotta pat us on the back a little bit because this is like the only time that we don't just talk football in the whole show. That includes ad breaks, which we have none of. That includes, we're poor because of it. But if you're listening to this pod, you don't have to ever fast forward 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes in the middle of the show like you do every other pod in the history of the world. You just get full blast football.
Full content all the time. We've got a great show for you guys for, late June. We're about to hit the full-on content doldrums. And so we've got news. We've got our Ask Blast from the Past, our ongoing segment where we're recapping the 2003 Chiefs season. We're recapping week 7. The Chiefs are traveling to the Black Hole to take on the Oakland Raiders.
Who?
The Chiefs 6-0 traveling to the Black Hole to take on the Oakland Raiders to see how that game plays out. And we got a new segment that we're going to debut because, again, it's off-season content, period. And it's a segment called Praying for Their Downfall. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's just us talking about the people whose downfall we are praying for. And it's going to be great. News. Well, I got a double piece of news here for you, Taylor, and you're going to like this one because it involves two things that we're very excited about on the show. Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer writes that it is possible the Chiefs could revisit the idea of signing former Cardinals wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins once they get an extension done for defensive tackle Chris Jones. That is expected to lower his $28 million cap hit if and when that happens. Albert Breer does say that he expects that deal to come together closer to training camp, which is also consistent with what Brett Veach has said and what Andy Reid has said, that they expect that to be something that takes place closer to training camp, which starts the last week of July. That would free up cap space to certainly be able to pay DeAndre Hopkins a little bit more money, compensate him a little bit more fairly, but also obviously would be great to get Chris Jones in the fold and sign long-term.
It would. This would be the move that I think would complete the Chiefs offseason. Not that they haven't had a good offseason, but this would be the crown jewel of the offseason, would be to not only extend your best player on defense, but bring in a guy of DeAndre Hopkins' talent. And I mean, there's been a lot of hand-wringing about the cap space and about the wide receiver room. The wide receiver room conversation to me is actually more interesting than the money because – the money, the cap isn't real, yada, yada, yada. But like the Chiefs have a lot of interesting pieces in the wide receiver room in the fold, to the point where there's been some speculation of whether a guy like Justin Ross can even crack the top 6 of the current wide receiver room and make the roster. And, if you're going to bring in Hopkins, now you're looking at, are the Chiefs going to try and field 7 wide receivers on opening day? Are they is that going to cut someone like Richie James, who was brought in probably to take over some return duties? And so, you could look at if Sky Moore shows some returning prowess in the offseason, they maybe then don't feel like they need Richie James anymore, and that could open up a spot. It's just the wide receiver room is really interesting right now, and Hopkins would, of course, make it even more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously, like you said, it would be the crown jewel. It would be the coup d'etat, the one fell swoop where Brett Veach would come in and give us everything that we've wanted from this offseason, which is wide receiver one, an established wide receiver one, albeit in the twilight of his career, and getting Chris Jones locked down and into the fold. It certainly seems like the news on Chris Jones, especially since compared to the last time he was going through contract extension talks, we talked about this last week and the week before that. It certainly seems like the tone is more optimistic than it was last time. And I,
100%.
at this point, have total confidence that that deal is going to get done. Whether DeAndre Hopkins comes along with that or not, I guess remains to be seen. But it certainly is encouraging because it felt like for a minute there that the Chiefs maybe were completely out of that conversation. Obviously, it was rumored that he was going to sign with the Patriots. That did not come to pass yet, although in the world of Patriots fandom, which again we may take a turn into later on in the podcast. I'm not promising it, but we do have a new segment that they may be appearing in. I mean, listen, they thought they were going to get DeAndre Hopkins. He's still unsigned. We still have Albert Breer saying that the Chiefs could revisit the idea. We'll see. Former Chief Carlos Dunlap says that he plans to play in 2023. He has not ruled out a return to the Chiefs. Sounds like they have had conversation. He says it's a waiting game with them right now. He certainly did not rule out playing for another team as well. He wants to play. He did say, I could help, another team get a ring like it did with the Chiefs last year, or it could help the Chiefs get another ring. So, it's good to see that he's kind of back on his mind. He's a player that certainly even before Frank Clark went and signed with the Denver Broncos, which, yeah, I know. I didn't want to bring it up, but I was thinking about it, and there may be some people related to that in the downfall segment as well. That's fine. That's a tease. That's what we call a tease in the industry. So Carlos Dunlap, it sounds like he would be interested and open to returning to the Chiefs. Certainly, it sounds like from what he's been representing, the Chiefs are maybe interested, but are kind of waiting, into that late July period right before camp starts, or even right after camp starts, when they're going to go in and make the last kind of couple veteran additions to the roster, which they, often do. So what do you think, Carlos Dunlap, 2023 Chief?
Yeah, man, sign me up. I've never really seen him struggle on the Chiefs defense. Like, I certainly think every time I noticed Carlos Dunlap, it was a positive thing that I noticed. It was, he still had juice for his age, and he was still getting his big paws up and knocking balls down. And I mean, he's a good player. And yes, he has not much gas left in the tank just for his career, but he certainly can help a team in 2023. And if he decides to come help the Chiefs are a better football team because of it. So that would be good. Not the end of the world if it doesn't happen, especially given the defensive end talent that the Chiefs now have. I mean, I don't know if he's looking at that room, and especially with the addition of both Omenihu and Felix Anudike-Uzomah, he might be thinking like, yeah, I'd love to come back, but like, where am I going to play? When am I going to play? Like, those guys are, two big time young additions that are superstars. Right. So yeah, I think that it would be fun to have him back, but I do not blame him if he thinks that he could help out somewhere else better.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's a place for him. Certainly the Chiefs defensive and defensive line has gotten a lot younger. And as we talked about, I think last week, they've injected a lot of young talent onto that side of the ball and into that position group, the defensive line. But Carlos Dunlap is a guy that I wouldn't mind having around as a veteran presence. When we were talking about the possibility of Frank Clark returning, he was certainly somebody that was providing mentorship for the young players. And
good point.
In a salary cap league where you have a 53-man roster and every position is important, you can't carry veteran players just for the sake of whatever they're providing in the locker room, right? You have to have guys that can play, but he can play. I mean, he showed last year that he can play in a limited role. And if he can give you some pass rushing juice on limited snaps while also providing that veteran presence in the locker room, so much the better. One final item of news, third annual Tight End University taking place this past week. Travis Kelce, of course, was one of the founding members of Tight End University, along with George Kittle and former NFL tight end Greg Olsen. I mean, first of all, were you surprised to see that this was only the third annual tight end university? Because I feel like this has been going on for
Literally
decades.
shocked. I mean, I knew that Kelsey founded it, but Kelsey's been around for a minute. And
He has.
I mean, I definitely thought if I had seen like 2017, 18, 19 in that range, I would have been
Sure.
I would have believed it. But this was 2021 was when they founded it. So this is only the third annual. I mean, yeah, I guess when we were talking about it like last year when it was going on, I felt like we were like, oh yeah, it's tight end U again. But like that was only the second one they had ever done. Just very surprising.
Yeah, very surprising. But as you said, Travis Kelce, the GOAT, out there teaching, obviously, his craft to many of the younger tight ends in the league. I think it's cool. I mean, like, obviously, there are two different schools of thought, I think, with this kind of thing. There was that pass rushing summit that Von Miller did that's been going on for several years. On the one hand, these are people that you're going to be competing against in a loose sense, because obviously tight ends are not going to be on the field at the same time, offense versus offense. But at the same time, I think it's cool to be able to share that knowledge. And obviously, as long as you're not giving anything away necessarily, I think it's a cool deal. And Travis Kelce had the quote of the event for sure. You're playing on your own melody, but you're on the QB's time. I mean,
it's just perfect.
It's music.
Yeah, it is funny to think about, athletes that are still playing, teaching other athletes how to play the game. Like it's one thing to do a youth camp. It's one thing to do even a post game, like after retirement to be teaching people. But like when you're in the off season, teaching your opponents how you're doing so well at the game, it just shows a level of like brotherhood and, something that we don't really get a good grasp of as fans, that like Kelsey's out there because he wants other tight ends to succeed, even if it's at the cost of doing better against the Chiefs or whatever. Like he feels a connection to these guys. He feels like they're his squad. And it's just it's interesting. And I mean, even though I think as a fan, I would rather Kelsey keep all of his GOAT secrets to himself. Like I get it. It's cool.
Sure. No, I mean, you could teach being Travis Kelce, but you can't be Travis Kelce. There's only one Travis Kelce. He's one of one.
Fortunately.
Fortunately for us. Well, that's it for the news. There you go. It's it's late June. Let's talk about the ass blast from the past. Week 7, 2003. We're spinning back in time 20 years to the year 2003. The Chiefs are traveling to Oakland.
Monday Night Football. John Madden on the call.
On Monday Night Football to take on the Oakland Raiders. And again, since the Raiders have now not played in Oakland for what seems like a decade, it's actually been, 3 or 4 years?
Sure.
It's weird. It was weird to go back. I'll just start us off. Like you said, I mean, John Madden on the call in the black hole facing the Oakland Raiders. This game feels like, and then watching highlights, of course, which might as well be in grainy black and white for the difference in quality of video and audio from 20 years ago. This could just as well have been 40 years ago. I mean, it's wild to think about, but even wilder is to think about the fact that the Oakland Raiders team that the Chiefs were facing here had been in the Super Bowl the previous year.
So they're defending AFC champs.
They were 2-4 when the Chiefs traveled a black hole to take them on. And they were not having a good season. They started off losing to the Titans 25-20 in week 1. They barely beat the Bengals, who were not good, by 3 points. They got blown out by the Broncos, a team that the Chiefs, of course, beat already in this 2003 season by 21 points. They beat the hapless San Diego Chargers, whom the Chiefs have also defeated already this year, by 3 points in overtime. They lost by 3 to the Chicago Bears, and they lost by 6 to the Cleveland Browns. So this is an Oakland Raiders team, again, that is the defending AFC champions, not off to a great start.
No, 2 of those teams, the Browns started off 1-5, and the Chargers started off 0-5, and they lost to those teams. I mean, they beat the Chargers in overtime, then lost to the Browns.
And they lost to the Browns.
I mean, it was the Raiders definitely showed that Super Bowl hangover that has become, kind of part of. I mean, obviously, the Chiefs broke that spell, but like there are definitely some teams that have been fallen victim to the Super Bowl hangover. And I mean, this is clear as day here that, Rich Gannon, who we'll talk about later on in this game because he gets banged up, but he was the MVP. So not only were they the defending AFC champions, they had the MVP quarterback, and they started off just kind of Oaklanding it up, just Raidering around, doing Raider stuff. And I just love the atmosphere of Chiefs Raiders every time. And I know that we've kind of lost some context on those games mattering because for so long now in the recent past, it has not mattered. But like Chiefs Raiders is electric. That atmosphere and that matchup, just it's one of those NFL matchups that just kind of transcends whatever's going on with either team. And I just kind of got that sense of rewatching this game that like it still mattered to those fans a lot in Oakland to beat the Chiefs. I mean, that was
sure. I mean, and especially in 2003 when the Raiders had been recently competitive, and obviously I think we can agree the apex of that rivalry was in the 90s.
Yes.
When
they were both
Marty.
Good.
Yeah, and they were both good. They were both good. And of course, Marty Schottenheimer infamously hated the Raiders and infused that Raider hating energy into every member of every Chiefs squad that played for him throughout the 90s. And obviously, this is post Marty, but it's still very close in time to that period of Chiefs history. You have some of the same players that have played under Marty and had experienced, that hatred of this franchise. Let me ask you this, because I obviously, one of the things that I feel like makes this segment compelling is you were a big fan of the Chiefs in 2003, and I was not. And the Rich Gannon thing, explain the Rich Gannon thing to me, because does that give this matchup any extra juice? Because obviously, I mean, everybody knows, I know, and and probably even the younger fans listening to this podcast know that Rich Gannon used to be a Chief, and he was traded away from the Chiefs because Elvis Gerbach, came back and they said, we don't need Rich Gannon, so we're going to trade him. And they traded him to the Raiders. And in his first season with the Raiders, which was 99, he goes 8-8, but he makes the Pro Bowl. He makes the Pro Bowl 3 straight years as the starter in Oakland. And then in his 4th year as the Raiders quarterback, he wins the MVP and he goes to the Super Bowl. And obviously at that point in time, this is something that no Chiefs quarterback has done in 40 years.
Since Len. I mean, Montana
exactly.
was 30 years,
right?
Certainly, yes.
Right. I mean, the Chiefs had not been to a Super Bowl since Super Bowl 4. So I'm curious to know like what the relationship of the fan base was like with Rich Gannon.
Well, since this was a time before Twitter and a time before a lot of the interconnectedness of the fandom that we see today, I can only tell you what my dad and I and my family members and maybe a couple people that I talked to about the Chiefs, what we felt about Rich Gannon. And that was that he kind of made us mad at the Chiefs. It's like, it's like one of those deals. You see this in sports a lot. You especially see it in like Royals or something like that, where you send a guy away and the guy kicks ass and you can't really be mad at the guy. Like you can't, Rich Gannon didn't force his way out of Kansas City.
Carlos Beltran.
Exactly right. And so, yes, the Chiefs traded away Gannon, but part of that also was because they had two, at the time, Gerbach wasn't all world by any means, but like they had two viable NFL starting quarterbacks when they knew when they traded away Gannon that he was a piece, but like they just, I think picking the Raiders as a trade destination for him, you can't really win that. You just kind of have to hope that he's bad or else don't trade him to them. I don't know. It was frustrating. It was frustrating because, like you said, quarterback play specifically has been what's held the Chiefs back since Montana, certainly between 93 and now 10 years later in 03. It's because they've been through the desert with quarterbacks. And to see a Raiders quarterback that was a former Chief then go on to win MVP and make the Super Bowl, it really, it hurt, but it didn't really. I never hated Rich Gannon, like as a fan. Like I, of course, wanted to see him not do well as a Raider, but like, no, I never thought like, oh, like a Neil Smith situation. That was completely different. Neil Smith certainly
because he chose
the Broncos in free agency. And I mean, that's a whole different deal. So yeah, that's kind of where I was at with Rich Gannon. He was a good quarterback, but he also wasn't like Pat. Like he wasn't a guy that when I watched him, I was like, I really wish this guy was playing quarterback for my team. Like I wanted him, but like it was a completely different situation than if he had been some superstar athlete and like
sure, he's a pocket pass.
Exactly. He's a game manager that was really good at managing games. It would have been like if Alex Smith had won an MVP, which he got close to in 2017. I mean, certainly was in the realm. And like, it's that type of quarterback where, yes, he was efficient. Yes, he was effective. Yes, he had a great team around him with good play calling and good, receivers and stuff like that. But like, Rich Gannon never made me pine for Rich Gannon as a Chief that much. That's
and I mean, just to kind of spin back in time, I mean, this is what Rich Gannon was doing as a Raider over his first 4 seasons. So that would include up through the 2002 MVP season. He's averaging 538 pass attempts a year, close to 4,000 yards a season, which back in that time, pretty good. And he led the league in passing. In 2002, he led the league in passing with 4,689 passing yards, which really, I mean, very solid.
5,000. Yeah.
He had over 600 pass attempts, which for that time, I mean, he was throwing the ball a lot, constantly. But he was averaging 28 touchdowns and 12 interceptions and, about 4,100 passing yards a year. That's on a per 17 game average, which helpfully Pro Football Reference does also give us the 16 game averages. So, we don't have to translate everything into modern times. So 16 game averages, he was right around 3,950 passing yards a year, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. I mean, when you say Alex Smith, like that actually does seem like a pretty Alex Smith-esque stat line, just sort of like souped up Alex Smith. Now, he made the Pro Bowl all 4 years. He was a first-team All-Pro twice and an MVP. And he finished 4th in MVP voting in 2000. I mean, it goes to show you that obviously quarterbacking play in the late 90s and early 2000s, I mean, that was pre-Brady. It was pre-Manning.
It was BC. I mean, it was
exactly. I mean, like
quarterbacks became what they are today.
Right. The end of the 90s, before Manning and Brady became the faces of the league, obviously you had Favre, but Favre has won his MVPs, won his Super Bowl. He's starting to fall off a little bit. He's inconsistent. He did finish second in the MVP voting behind Gannon that year. Yep. But, I mean, the other guys that finished in the MVP voting, it was Favre second. It was Steve McNair third. Then it was Derek Brooks, a linebacker.
Tampa Bay linebacker,
for the Bucs. Yeah. And then it was Priest. Priest was fifth, and Michael Vick was sixth. Yeah. So, I mean, like,
and that was early Michael Vick.
Exactly. The pre-Brady Manning quarterback play at the end of the 90s. I mean, souped up Alex Smith is winning you an MVP and getting you to a Super Bowl.
Sure. Yep. Exactly right. So while he was a game manager, he was still very effective, and he brings in a Raiders offense that, they're coming off of the year before where they were electric and dynamic. And as the fans, even though they had been struggling, you never really think like, oh, we're 6 games into the year. Like, I bet they're not going to bust out that 2002 offense. Like, you still are very conscious of the fact that they could come out here and light the Chiefs up. But let's get into the game. They didn't quite light the Chiefs up. That wasn't really on the cards for the Raiders. Teams kind of went back and forth. They punted a couple times. There wasn't really much going on in the first quarter. And then at the end of the first quarter, there was a DPI where Eddie Kennison caught the ball in the first play of the possession after Shane Leckler shanked a punt only 34 yards. And then Eddie Kennison goes deep for 43. Priest gets it down to the 2. And on 2nd and goal, one of the most Trent Green plays of the year, he scores a rushing touchdown, but it was not a sneak from the 2. He snuck around, or he went around the right side on like a little boot rushing touchdown.
Yeah, right.
Just really funny to see Trent Green run on the ball.
It was preposterous to see because honestly, like, all NFL players are good athletes, but my God, Trent Green's slow. He was so slow. Like, I honestly don't think, that's the other thing too. We're talking about, late 90s, early 2000s quarterback play. There's like 2 guys in the league who scramble. I mentioned Michael Vick. The reason Michael Vick is finishing 6th in the MVP voting wasn't because he was good at throwing the ball.
16 touchdowns that year.
Because he was not. It was because he was rushing for like 800 yards a season. And he was a total anomaly. He was... you had Randall Cunningham before him that could scoot. You have Steve McNair, who is a contemporary of his, who could scoot a little bit. But
Steve McNair is more like a Cam, he's more like just a basher runner and not Michael Vick is like a Lamar, like Michael Vick
Lamar before Lamar
burn you. Absolutely. And
was a better arm.
They were not
and
these.
in a
All the
different
other 30 quarterbacks in the league besides those guys, were statue Dan Marino types Dan Marino types that were just kind of a Trent Green, perfect example. Rich Gannon, none of those guys could run. I mean, they were all sitting there trying to pass.
I could not believe how long it took Trent Green to reach the end zone from where he received the snap. I mean, like, I honestly, it felt like the highlight was in slow motion, which it might have been because, again, we're dealing with ancient technology here. It's hard to see that as a reliable record. So the Chiefs go up 7-0 in this game on this absurd Trent Green touchdown. And I got to tell you, this next drive, we didn't see an appearance, but 2 drives from now, I was stunned to see, and I shouldn't have been, but like, this just goes to show again what a completely different era and time 2003 was in football years. 3 drives into the game, guess who shows up and starts making an impact on this game? It's 40-year-old Jerry Rice, who I knew played for the Raiders, but like, holy shit. Like, Jerry Rice played in this game.
Jerry Rice, that's the era.
20 years ago. Like, it's the Jerry Rice era. Jerry Rice made his NFL debut in 1985. That was 2 years before I was born. And this game happened while I was in high school.
18 years later.
And Jerry Rice was still playing in the NFL. And what's more, this wasn't even his last NFL season. He played another year after that. He played in 2004, which is crazy to me. But, I mean, 2004 was the first year that I started watching football. I don't remember seeing Jerry Rice because I wasn't like a football super fan. And I mean, I wasn't a football fan at all. And it probably,
Oakland traded him to Seattle in 2004 anyway. I mean, he had
Jerry Rice was 41 at the midpoint of the season, and he had 869 yards. I mean, what is this game? What is 2003 football? This is ridiculous.
It's pretty weird. It's pretty weird to go back and realize some of these guys that were playing with other guys that, the other thing is, you catch guys at different, when you go back and look at a point in time for a game, you catch some guys that are at the tail end of storied careers, like Jerry Rice. And then you'll like see a guy that makes a tackle and you're like, oh, that was like the first career game of, all pro, 20-year player that we, something like that, just, it's funny how those careers meet up with each other. Rice
time.
Yeah, exactly. Rice at this point, before this game, he had 126 yards in week 4 against San Diego. So like, he's still capable, even though he's 41, of being Jerry Rice. Like,
he was the Raiders leading receiver in this game.
As you would expect. Absolutely. So it's just funny. You're right. When you see Rich Gannon pass complete to Jerry Rice, you're like, oh yeah. So so they go back and forth. The Chiefs had scored the touchdown. They're up 7-0. And then again, punts back and forth. There was an Eric Warfield interception to end the Raiders drive after the Chiefs scored a touchdown. But this game was just kind of a slog. It's now, you're going late in the second quarter, and the Chiefs, after having driven down to the Oakland 19 at 4th and 4 to 19, they chip shot a little field goal in there by Morton Anderson, left-footed 40-year-old kicker. I mean, it's just
look at this cast of characters. We've got Jerry Rice, we've got
John Madden on the call,
we've got Charles Woodson, we've got John Madden on the call.
Right, exactly.
Like I said, this game is it's from a different era.
Time. So they head to halftime, and after the Morton Anderson kick, the Chiefs led this game 10-0. And you've got to think, as a Chiefs fan, okay, you still don't really know about the Chiefs. They had showed up early on in the season. They kind of got worked over then for a couple games. And even though they won the games, they won some shootouts. The Packers, certainly the week before, lit the Chiefs up. And now you're facing your bitter rival on Monday night on the road, which is a tough ask. I mean, going into the black hole after coming off of an AFC championship and, holding this offense down to 0 points in the first half is remarkable. But what was even, go ahead.
I mean, I was going to say, I mean, the Raiders were 2-4, but like, we didn't know that this was going to be the start of a 2-decade swoon for the Raiders.
No,
right? They were a winning streak away from being, the 90s and early 2000s Raiders.
Exactly. So the bigger news in the first half, or the biggest news, was on a Sean Barber's second sack of the first half, a vicious sack on Rich Gannon. I mean, it was legal, but it was a big hit.
Sure, but it was a 2003 sack, not a 2023 sack.
Exactly. He basically took his head off, and he hurt Rich Gannon's shoulder. And so that was the final. That was with 34 seconds left in the half. And then out comes the Raiders offense to start the third quarter. And under center is Raiders backup quarterback with 6 passes on the season, Marcus Tuiasosopo. Now, I don't know if anyone out there is familiar with Marcus Tuiasosopo and his legendary career, lack thereof. But what always sticks out to me with that last name, just to throw this out there, is that his cousin's dad was his dad's cousin was the person that catfished Manti Te'o. Manti Te'o was catfished by a person named I guess he changed his name into a she. But Tuiasosopo, Ronaya was when he was was the guy that catfished Manti Te'o. And so every time I see the name Tuiasosopo, I of course can't help but think of that story that captivated the nation. Kind of reminds me of like the sub story right now. Like everyone talked about Manti Te'o. My mom asked me about like what's going on with that linebacker that like thinks he's dating someone that, I mean, you know, like it's just funny when things like permeate every culture, even if they're just a sports story. And
RIP to the Titanic sub, but you know, we all knew they were dead on Sunday. If you didn't think that, you don't know anything about submarines in the deep ocean. Come on. Marcus Tuiasosopo. And I love that you shared that story with me, because somehow that incredibly important piece of information about his career is not listed on his Wikipedia page. These are the kind of facts that you can only possess from a really deep, long, storied football watching career. So kudos to you.
That's right.
He had 10 pass attempts in his career coming into this game. This was his 3rd NFL season. So, you know, not getting a whole lot of game action. Like you said, 6 pass attempts. He threw 1 in the loss to Tennessee, and 5 in that blowout loss to Denver. They put him in at the end to save Rich Gannon. But, I mean, this is a guy that, to this point in his career, had not started any games. He would go on to start 2 games in his NFL career. He won none of them.
Yep.
So, you know, I mean, this is a guy that had 10 passes for 69 yards coming into this game.
Nice. Yeah,
very nice.
He was definitely not a guy that you would expect to come in and light the Chiefs defense up. But just to kind of summarize his half, and he threw for 224 yards in the second half and almost tied the game. So which,
by the way, is almost half of his career total. He threw for 554
that's pretty good.
Career yards.
That's pretty good.
Total.
Yeah, I mean, 224 and a half is 448 for a game. And I mean, that's a hell of a game. So he definitely came out. He knew they had to throw. He knew that it was 10-0 Chiefs. The Chiefs were kind of playing cat and mouse with the Raiders in this game. Like, even though it was 10-0, and even though the Chiefs offense wasn't really doing anything, you could just tell that the Raiders were in trouble. So I just want to quickly, the Raiders punt. Morton Anderson does miss a 50-yard field goal on the next one, which, he didn't have the biggest leg in the world, so that's not surprising. Then the Raiders punt again. And so you're already deep into the third quarter. You're 4 minutes left in the third quarter, and it's still 10-0 Chiefs. But Trent Green throws an interception, and then Marcus Tuiasosopo throws one right back. And Dexter McCleon picks that one up. So the Chiefs secondary has come up so far with 2 picks in this game. Again, even when they're giving up points, which they're not in this game, these picks this year in 2003 were just so timely, and so, have to have these turnovers. And one thing about this Chiefs defense this year is they continually came up in big moments, and Chiefs took back over. And at the end of the third quarter, they punt back to the Raiders, and it's still 10-0 Chiefs to start the fourth quarter.
It's crazy because obviously, I feel like when a backup quarterback comes into the game, to me anyway, I feel like right away, like, this guy's going to have it or he's not. Like he's gonna be a problem for us. You get the measure of him pretty quickly, right? Like, usually the defense is going to be catching up to the backup quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to the other way around. Like, you have to. It's a change of pace to have a guy that you have not practiced for, that you haven't scouted tape on. And, when that guy comes in and brings a unique skill set to the game, that could be tough sometimes for the defense. Obviously, recent example, the Chiefs played Justin Herbert in his first game. They didn't know Justin Herbert was going to play. And it took them that entire game to sort of get the measure of Justin Herbert. I mean, Marcus Tuiasosopo was not showing anything remotely threatening to this Chiefs defense. And then the fourth quarter starts, and boy, he puts together this long scoring drive. It ends in a Sebastian Janikowski. Look at that. We've got another big name, another important figure
another
in
GOAT.
NFL history. Seabass kicking a 27-yard field goal. And I mean, it's 10-3. They move the ball on the Chief ends, and suddenly it's a one-score game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, 4th and 9 from the 9. You obviously, with a backup quarterback, you got to kick that ball.
It's almost a 6-minute drive, a 13-play drive.
Yeah, and I mean they were pretty methodical. They only had 1 third down on the whole drive, and that's the one they didn't get and kicked the field goal. So other than that, they were going, 4 yards, 6 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, 8 yards. They just kept taking chunks. So now Chiefs take back over the ball. There's 8 minutes to go. You're protecting a 7-point lead, and you think that the Chiefs are going to ice the game because with 5 minutes left after a bing bang boom drive where actually this drive included, and I feel like we say this a lot this season too, but a muffed punt by the Raiders. I mean, the Chiefs punt on 4th and 3 from their own 36, and Philip Buchanan muffs it. Mark Boerichter recovers it. He of the 99-yard reception. And next thing you know, the Chiefs have the ball with 6 minutes again, protecting the 7-point lead, and they march right down the field, and Priest Holmes scores a 2-yard touchdown. And now it's 17-3 with 5 minutes to go against a backup quarterback. I mean, this game's iced.
I mean, right. There's literally nothing to worry about. I didn't even look at the box score or the highlights, so I don't even know what happens the rest of the game. Obviously, the Chiefs won, and nothing happened. I'm kidding, of course. But the Raiders come back, and, they're down 2 scores with 5 minutes left in the game. Marcus Tuiasosopo leads the Raiders on a 65-yard touchdown drive in 7 plays in 2.5 minutes, which, again, I feel like we're going to hit on recurring themes throughout this recap of the season. Like, that's pretty surprising and good for 2003. I mean, this is Patrick Mahomes
this drive,
out there.
You mean? Absolutely.
It's not the modern NFL offense that can score in 13 seconds. It is a 2003 offense, even a hurry-up offense in 2003 that is not, it just isn't sophisticated enough to be able to score incredibly quickly, right?
Held by a backup quarterback.
And your number one receiver in this game is 40-year-old Jerry Rice, who obviously can still get open, but it's not like he's going to catch a 60-yard touchdown, over the top of the defense to tie this game up, or to bring it closer, I should say. But the Raiders get down and they turn this into a 7-point game, and the Chiefs turn around and, last week in Green Bay in overtime, they give the ball to Priest Holmes 8 straight times. And you think, well, can they impose their will on the Raiders? Because everybody knows that's what they're going to do.
Sure.
They're going to hand it off to Priest. They're going to ice this game. They're just going to try and run out the clock. They only have, a little over 2 minutes to run the clock out in this game. And they do start off by handing it off to Priest. They only get a yard. They then throw a fullback pass to Tony Richardson for 7 yards. And then on 3rd and 2, Rod Woodson and Roderick Coleman stand Priest Holmes up behind, the left side, Willie Roaf's side, and stop him short on 3rd and 2. And from the 44 on 4th and 1, the Chiefs punt 49 yards. Now, there still is only 1:47 left in this game. The Raiders have no timeouts because they had to stop the clock. And they still have Marcus Tuiasosopo leading this offense. There's no way that Marcus Tuiasosopo is going to lead the Raiders on a game-tying touchdown drive with 1:47 left in the game.
The punt by Jason Baker was down at the 6. So, the Raiders start off with 94 yards to go and 1:47 and a backup quarterback and no timeouts because they used all their timeouts on the previous Chiefs drive. The previous Chiefs drive, by the way, took 31 seconds because the 2-minute warning was in there and the 2nd and 3rd Raiders timeout. So, they ran 3 plays and punted, but, it barely took any time at all. And then that's what the Raiders at least needed to do to get a chance. And just to kind of go through what happens on this drive, Marcus Tuiasosopo scrambles for 4 yards inbounds with 1:47, and then they hurry up. And with 1:39, they hurried up too fast, and they had a false start. So now they're back at 2nd and 11 at the 5 with 1:39 to go. 95 yards to go. Jerry Rice, 8 yards. Jerry Rice, 23 yards, spiked the ball with a minute. Jerry Porter, big back-breaking 35-yarder, got behind the secondary. All of a sudden, it's at the Chiefs' 29-yard line, and the ball is spiked again. So this is the second spike on the drive with 40 seconds to go. and then 2 incomplete passes, 29 seconds to go. It's after the spike was first down, right? And then incomplete on second, incomplete on third, 4th and 10 from the 29, Jerry Rice, 15 yards. So now it's tight butthole time. It's 11 seconds left. It's the 14-yard line. It's first down. Tuiasosopo fakes the spike and tries to throw to Tim Brown in the end zone, and it's played brilliantly by Dexter McLeon. Almost picked, but he dives in front of it. Really, really good play. So then with 7 seconds left, Tuiasosopo takes the snap, rolls, avoids some pressure, goes to the right side, sees Tim Brown standing. I mean, he's kind of covered, but he's pretty open in the end zone, or where Tuiasosopo thought was the end zone. Throws him the ball. Brown catches it at the 1, and it is immediately double team tackled by Woods and Wesley, and that game is blouses. That game is over. It is final score, Chiefs 17, Raiders 10, Monday Night Football, walk-off defensive touch or defensive stop for the Chiefs. Dick Vermeil gets his second win on a stopped play at the 1-yard line after famously beating the Titans in the Super Bowl in 2000 on the last play of the game. And on this one, then obviously in a much, I mean, it's not the Super Bowl, but it's certainly Monday Night Football Chiefs Raiders. It's still a pretty good atmosphere
to for the Chiefs
to go to 7-0. What a game. This was crazy.
I mean, it is crazy. And sometimes these games with backup quarterbacks turn into legendary games. And I feel like, when we started talking about this in the pre-show, this is a game that you remember when we sort of discussed this week, last week, you were like, yeah, this is the Marcus Tuiasosopo game. And, it's funny because the Chiefs have played certainly a number of memorable games against backups over the years. Obviously the Justin Herbert game that I already mentioned, just this past season against Tennessee, the Malik Willis game, which ended up being a great crazy, bizarre, great game. Yeah. Which was a total slog. And this ended up being incredibly dramatic, even after the reigning MVP for the reigning AFC champions gets knocked out of the game in the first quarter, or in the second quarter, first half. It comes down to literally the last play of the game on the 1-yard line on the road for the Chiefs to go to 7-0.
Yep. It was quite the adventure. This 2003 team was, games like this where, this Chiefs team was averaging close to 30 points a game. They were still doing their high flying, scoring a bunch of points type of stuff. But you'll notice, there was no Dante Hall return in this game. And when there's no Dante Hall return, that's basically 7 points that you're guaranteed from that 4-game stretch that you're now not getting anymore. Sure. And, so it becomes a little bit of like, okay, where's the offense going to come from? We're going to do our awards, but I just, this offense, without the electric special teams plays, you do kind of start to look at it like, all right, they've got Priest Holmes. He's awesome. They've got an offensive line that just bulldozes everybody. And they've got Tony Gonzalez, who's a future Hall of Famer at tight end. But I don't really see them show up in box scores the way that I guess my 2023 brain expects those talents to show up in box scores. If this team was playing in 2023, these exact guys just plucked out of time, plopped into 2023, I guarantee you these guys would be putting up 36 points a game. They were dynamic and outstanding football players. But it's just funny when I look at 1 catch for 43 yards for Eddie Kennison. What is happening here?
Yeah, if Andy Reid's calling the plays, maybe. But
sure.
It is interesting because it feels like for all of their, high flying firepower. This is the team that was first in scoring in 2002 and would end the season first in scoring in 2003.
Where's it been?
Yeah, where is it? And we're almost halfway through the season. We're
right.
1 game shy of the midway mark. The Chiefs are 7-0, and it's like, is this the best offense in the league?
Okay, counterpoint though. There have been now 7 games.
Sure.
3 of them, the Chiefs scored over 40.
Yeah.
They scored over 40 in week 2 against Pittsburgh, 42 against Houston in week 3, and then 40 on the overtime touchdown at Green Bay. So they scored 17 in this game, and it felt like it was a slog. And they scored 17 at Baltimore, including the Dante return. And those 2 games definitely felt like this is your number 1 offense. But
right, no, that's fair.
They had 3 40 burgers, a 24 against Denver, and a 27 against San Diego. But that's just kind of what 2003 football looks like to us looking back on it. It just looks like, where's the football? Where's the offense?
Yeah, and it's interesting because even the best offense in the league in 2003, I mean, just disappeared for a couple of games. And couldn't score points for a couple of games. And that's, I mean, Priest Holmes is great, and you have the best offensive line in the league. You have a capable quarterback and a Hall of Fame pass catcher.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I mean, again, this is still a league of fairly crude offensive play design and very crude offensive play calling. You know, you're not aggressive going for it. It's still very much a run-first offense. And, you know, spoiler alert, running the ball was just as inefficient in 2003 as it is in 2023.
Right.
It's just that teams didn't know that it was inefficient, and they wanted to do it more. And every team in the league, every offense in the league was built around running the ball first. And I mean,
can you imagine rooting for not the Chiefs in this time period?
No.
Like watching the Browns score like 12 points a game or whatever and being like, oh, this is just normal football. Like, ugh.
Well, listen, I mean, look, if we look at the team stats for 2003, like the Chiefs led the league in scoring. They were the highest scoring team in the league by like 2.5 points. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were comfortably better. Yeah. The Rams and Colts were second at 27.9. They were tied. And then you have a couple other teams, the Packers and the Titans, one of which we've already seen, scoring 27 points a game. And then the drop-off after that, you've got in sixth place the Vikings at 26, so it's a full 4.5 points behind the Chiefs. The Seahawks at 25.3 with the, of course, star running back, Sean Alexander, you know.
Yep.
The Baltimore Ravens at 24. I mean, when you get down to the midpoint, the average offenses in the league in 2003, the Chargers and the Dolphins at 16 and 17, they're averaging 19.5 points a game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
an
very
average
low. That's an average offense. You know,
yeah.
I mean, it just is it's hard to comprehend sometimes the generational differences that we have.
Well, how about this one too?
Football and 2023 football.
Total points, because they were 2.5 points over. Over 16 games, that means that the Rams scored 447 in second with the Colts. The Chiefs scored 484 points. They were a good 40 points clear of second place. And quarterback for the Rams, Kurt Warner. Quarterback for the Colts, Peyton Manning. Quarterback for the Packers in fourth, Brett Favre. Quarterback, I mean, hell,
Stephen
Nair won an
Nair.
MVP.
Sure, I mean, he was
shared MVP, but yeah,
second in MVP voting the year before that, or third in MVP voting the year before that. Right. I mean.
So
and the Vikings had Dante Culpepper.
Yeah, you know right. I mean, like, so anyone who's worth their shit at all at quarterback in this era was scoring points, and they weren't touching the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, as we said, God bless Trent Green, but you know, he's no Hall of Fame quarterback. He's they just had everything. They just had everything going and working together, and offense, defense, special teams. This unit that got to 7-0 did not get to it as a fluke. This was not something where they could look back and say that, man, I can't believe those Chiefs got to 7-0. No, they were nasty. They were nasty in all three phases of the game.
And I mean, to be clear, they've had some close escapes in this. Obviously, the Baltimore game, the Denver game, where you're basically at Dante Hall return touchdown away from, you know, being tied, potentially going to overtime, and then literally flipping a coin. And if you lose the coin toss, you lose, because that's how overtime essentially worked back in 2003. But
right,
I mean, just to close this loop on the offense, the first offense on this list, or besides the Chiefs, that doesn't have an elite quarterback is the Ravens in 8th place, and they're averaging 6 fewer points a game than the Chiefs.
Yeah,
you know, with Kyle Bullard as their quarterback. Right. Yep. You know, you'd have to go all the way down to the Ravens before you'd even get to a team that has a similar, and they had Jamal Lewis. You know, we obviously saw the Ravens earlier in this recap, and you know, they were built around running the ball. They were averaging 6 points less a game than the Chiefs were. So Chiefs are dominant. They're 7-0. Can't wait to see how this season ends. We'll tune in next week to see the Chiefs take on the Buffalo Bills. This will be a fun one. A little bit of a laugher, spoiler alert, but it'll be fun to recap nonetheless. So let's do our awards here. We've got, for those of you who are new to the program, 5-star man. 5-star man! 5-star man! Trash man.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
And wild card.
Wild card, bitches! Yeah!
fairly self-explanatory. I'll let you take the 5-star man for this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little crass, but the guy that knocked Rich Gannon out, Sean Barber,
Sure.
I mean, he was a big cultural shift on the defense. And, he's one of the reasons that he came into this team and they started playing much, much, much better defense than they did the season before. He had 2 first-half sacks and he had 9 tackles. He was an all-star out there and a fumble forced. I mean, again, we talked about, just the individual performances on defense and how Greg Wesley or Jerome Woods the week before had the game sealing pick 6 and all that stuff. But like Sean Barber as a linebacker here was dominant. So he was easily the 5-star man in this game for me.
A guy that's shown up a couple of times. So shout out to Sean Barber. Big performance in this game. I will take the trash man. And I mean, there were some candidates, but I'm going to take Johnny Morton in this game. I feel a little bit bad because I don't know what it is. We've had it a couple weeks in a row now where the Chiefs have gotten blown up, on a wide receiver run. Johnny Morton had 1 carry in this game for -9 yards.
Yeah, it didn't work.
But he had 4 targets, 2 receptions for 19 yards. That is a trash man worthy performance in this particular game. I mean, it's hard to pick on the defense in this game because they did only give up 10 ultimately, although
to Tuiasa Sopo.
I mean, yeah, and
almost
honest,
17.
I mean, Tim Brown was real close to being in the end zone on that play.
Yeah, he
right?
was.
It was very close to being.
If there were HD replays in 2003, that game might still be playing right now.
Yeah, it might be. I mean, it wouldn't be because
overtime.
sudden death overtime and
yeah, sure.
Sebastian Janikowski would have kicked like a 60-yarder or something, and it would have been great. But I'm going to take Johnny Morton as the trash man. That 1 carry for -9 yards is very unseemly and unsightly in the box score.
And it was on the first drive of the game on 2nd and 9.
Sure.
And they lost 9 yards. And so then they had 3rd and 18 and couldn't convert. So, I mean, it even started the offense off. That's a huge loss on 2nd and 9 to go backwards 9 yards.
No, it's not good.
Nice job, John.
You want to?
Yes.
You want to do
I'll take our wild card. And the wild card for me this week, we've kind of twisted up the wild card, I think, maybe a little bit in this recap compared to maybe how we did it for contemporary Chiefs teams. To me, the wild card now, it's just anyone that does anything unexpected, wild, crazy.
Yeah, weird, sure.
It used to be kind of like an up and down performance in a game to me, but now it's like Trent Green had a right end bootleg 2-yard touchdown run. Like, who cares what else he did in that game? That is some wild card shit. That is something that you just do not. Some crisis shit. You don't expect Trent Green to do it. You just don't. So that was certainly my wild card performance there. Was Trent Green's 2-yard rush, one of his 6 rushing touchdowns in his NFL career.
Sure. I mean,
long NFL career.
Yeah. I mean, very long NFL career. And by the way, I mean, he had 2 this season, but this was all really like in the first 4 seasons of his career that he had, 4, and then he picked up 2 in the season. The man was slow. He was. I don't think I appreciated until I saw him score on that play just how slow Trent Green was. I can tell you he was extremely slow. Let's move to our final segment. Now we put the Chiefs Ask Blast in the past, and we go on to our new segment, Praying for Their Downfall, where we pray for the downfall of whoever. And we've left this segment completely open-ended. I think the premise is self-explanatory, but we have people whose downfall we're praying for. And I'll let you start. You tell me who you're praying for.
We're just going to kind of go back and forth, talk about people that we're really, really just hoping that they fall on their face in 2023 in the NFL universe. My number one, if this were a draft, we're not drafting, but you got to pick the Bengals, right? Their whole existence, their fan base, their team, they have just
I was going to say, be more specific.
The fans,
particular player. Okay.
The fans, right. The Bengals fans, because honestly, I have no issues with pretty much anything that Bengals players, they've been talking their talk, but that's fine. What really bugs me is these insane claims of rent-free by their fans, where they will literally tweet about the Chiefs all day long. And their tweets are about how Chiefs fans are obsessed with them. It's just It's very
and then
delusional.
We respond.
Yeah, and then we light them up with Lombardi's. Like when you're winners, like and someone's talking shit. Yeah,
you're not celebrating your Super Bowl appropriately. Right. Why are you talking about us? And it's like, bro.
Specifically, shout out to the guy that said, "Oh, the Chiefs went 12-4 and then drafted Pat, and the Bills went 9-7 and then drafted Allen, but the Bengals went 2-14 and then drafted Joe." Do you notice anything? And everyone's like,
"Congrats!
Yeah, you were shitty, and so you picked a good quarterback that was one overall
the best quarterback, right?
Like
you got the guy that threw 60 touchdowns in his last season in college and won the national championship.
You know, like if your argument is that we were worse in the past, therefore we're still worse in the present, and that's somehow your victory lap, like,
oh yeah, no, that's definitely what it was. I mean, you know, Joe Burrow didn't have Andy Reid and Travis Kelce.
Yeah, well, you still don't have him.
Right.
Like, yeah, you're still worse. And if that's your argument,
you're still worse.
Then...
Exactly right. I mean, the whole idea of flexing
another team having good stuff. Yeah.
It's a really, I mean, like it's a wild flex, and it's something that these fan bases have been doing all the time. Like, you know, it is a loser mentality, but that's like when you don't yeah, exactly. When you've never won anything, you have to explain why you've never won anything. And it's like you have a better coach than us. If your quarterback had better coaching and he had better receivers. And it's like,
keep talking, baby. Tell us more why we're awesome.
Well, yes, that is why we are better than you, and we've won 2 rings in 5 years, and you still have none ever. I had Bengals fans very high on my list.
Sure.
So they actually were right below my top choice, which was influenced by what I was doing before and during the opening segments of this podcast.
I wondered how you would skew this.
I mean, listen, it's extreme recency bias, but oh my God, Tom Brady fans. I'm hugely praying for their downfall, like literally just today. So this morning, I saw a tweet about Tom Brady's 5-year peak. And it said 5-year regular season peaks. It had Tom Brady 2007 to 2012, Peyton Manning 2003 to 2007, Patrick Mahomes 2018 to 2022. Now, Tom Brady has an extra season snuck in there.
Yeah, 2007 to 2012.
2012 is actually 6 seasons. And I had people all over my mentions telling me that Tom Brady didn't play in 2008. Well, he did. He just played in 1 game before Bernard Pollard destroyed his knee and cost him the rest of the season. The problem is, if you're going to say 5-year regular season peaks, it's got to be 5 years. It can't be 6 years. That just doesn't make sense, right? Like, I mean, is Mike Vick's 5-year peak like 2003 to 2011? Because he spent
those were his 5 healthy years in there.
He spent like 3 years in prison in there, and he was also hurt a couple of years. I mean, does that make any sense? No, it does not make any sense.
No.
But the reason I'm praying for their downfall is the obvious. I mean, like, these people are actually really similar to Bengals fans, but at the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yes.
Bengals fans are never wases, and Brady fans are has-beens.
Yep.
And they behave in a very similar way, where because they know that they're not it right now, they have to sort of manufacture these narratives, and it makes them hugely insecure. And it's so fascinating to me that we have these two. I would say these are the 2 most insecure types of NFL fans that exist on social media. And it's one fan base that's never won anything, and the other fan base that literally watched the most accomplished quarterback of all time play 23 seasons, win 7 Super Bowls, and they're just constantly talking about the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. And it's like, we have to compare Tom Brady, who had a 23-season NFL career. We have to find a way to get 6 of his seasons in a row to compare it to Patrick Mahomes' first 5 seasons to, like, show that he's slightly better. Like, he's had a slightly better 5-year regular season peak when Mahomes has only played 5 seasons. And Brady's best 5 seasons consecutively ever are actually 6 seasons, and they're, like, barely better. They're literally tied in EPA per game.
Yeah,
it's very close to total EPA.
If you did the blind resume thing and you covered both their names and you showed someone and you said, which group of 5 years would you take? Like 50% of people would pick one group and 50% of the other.
And of course, this chart didn't include Super Bowl wins, which,
of course,
I mean, listen,
normally Pat loses that one.
Exactly. That's an unimpeachable aspect of Tom Brady's legacy. He has 7 rings. You can always just say count the rings. But in this case, they said 5-year regular season peaks. And it's like, all right, you pick Tom Brady's best 5 regular seasons that happened to take place over 6 years. And he won no Super Bowls in that stretch. And
who losses to Eli Manning?
I mean, listen, like, we're going to have to conduct some sort of statistical survey here. But, like, if you weight individual accomplishments, regular season performance, postseason performance, and Super Bowl victories, I think it's kind of hard to make an argument that Patrick Mahomes' first 5 seasons aren't better than any 5 seasons of Tom Brady's career. Like, it wouldn't be 2007 to 2012 because, again, that's 6 seasons rings. And also no rings. Like, it would have to be late career 3 Super Bowl Brady. But, I mean, that's still real close in terms of actual production. And it's not like, they love to be like, oh, he's throwing to Troy Brown, David Van Patten. It's like, okay, not when he was winning MVPs, not when he was setting the single season touchdown record. He was throwing to Randy Moss, the second greatest receiver of all time. A couple years after that, he had Gronk and Edelman and Aaron Hernandez
and Godwin and Evans in Tampa. I mean, he certainly surrounded himself by talent late in his career, and that's fine. That's how you win games. Like no one should be celebrating the fact that he had shitty players around him on offense. And I mean, they won those first 3 because of Bill Belichick. They won them because their defense was out of this world phenomenal, and they stopped the greatest show on turf and held them to no points. I mean, look, it's fine. Brady fans will just slowly shrivel as the years go on. And as Pat continues to stack awards and accomplishments and gets closer and closer to Brady's resume, they're just going to, there's going to be some dark, dark days in Boston. And I guess the 4 people in Tampa Bay that still like Tom Brady.
Sure. All right. Who else is downfall in Frankfurt?
Well, I mean, we've got to mention AFC West rivals, the Denver Broncos. And
sure, of course.
Certainly, yeah, of course, as yours, I would imagine, living directly in the heart of Broncos country. But, the Broncos are a special kind of downfall here because they're not really falling down. It's more like I'm wishing that they're going to stay exactly where they are.
Correct.
I'm wishing for status quo.
Very much further down to go.
They have already experienced their downfall, and I am wishing for it to continue. And, we've talked about this a lot since they made their big move for Sean Payton, but that is a hugely high risk move for them, trading a first round pick for a coach to coach a quarterback that might not be fixable. Also, Russ just sucks now, like just is not easy to root for. I liked him a lot when he was in Seattle. I thought he was cool. And then the more I got exposed to him now, the less I think that he's, even worth cheering for. He's just a weirdo and has all those weird rules and ways that he treats people around him and stuff. And he's just not likable. So continuing to pray for the expanded and everlasting downfall of the Denver Broncos.
I love it. And I went a little bit more specific with it. And I'm specifically praying for the continued downfall of Russell Wilson. And
that's kind of where I was going with that. Yeah.
As a man of faith, Russell Wilson, I'm sure is he's battling me. It's like we're both appealing to a higher power, but he's saying please restore my power. And I'm saying no, keep this guy's power away from him. He was annoying when he had the power, and he's less annoying now, but in some ways he's more annoying now because
I was going to say he was more annoying.
He's not good at football anymore, but he thinks he is. I just want the whole charade to continue. I just want the circus to stay in town. And to do that, Russell Wilson is going to have to stay bad. And, again, like you said, he was so bad last year that it makes me question whether he was ever good or if it was all just a smoke and mirrors act concocted by
Pete Carroll.
This, sexy grandpa, Pete Carroll, who's a total football dinosaur when it comes to offense. And he's we're going to run the ball. I'm maybe the guy had a point.
Yeah.
I don't know how
maybe
it's
he knew what he was
possible. For years I was pro Russ and anti Pete, but oh my God, I've done a complete 180.
Yep.
Next person we're praying for their downfall. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Sean Watson.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
Not somebody who, and listen, miss me with the whole like he wasn't charged with anything. Yeah, okay.
He's a hella rapist.
That's fine. He's a credibly accused rapist, and he settled out of court with all of these people, these sexual assault allegations. He's not a good person. And the whole Brown situation, I mean, like, it's not like I shouldn't have animosity towards the Browns. It's like for a long time, the Cubs, when they were relevant and couldn't win a World Series, they played the National League. They weren't really direct rivals to any teams that I was rooting for, but I was like, I just don't like the Cubs. Like, You're not lovable. You're just bad. And I don't want you to do well. There's nothing about your badness that's compelling to me. And that's how the Browns feel before they got to Sean Watson. And now,
yes.
It's like now I really don't want it. Like, not only do I want you to continue to stay bad forever, there are some franchises that just are so bad that they deserve to stay bad for all time and punish their fans and punish their team and their players and their management and their owners. And the Browns are one of those teams for me. And especially after they, I mean, like, I don't even think that people are going to talk about what he did anymore on the broadcasts. I mean, you're getting all this,
it's old news.
Like Sean, Sean's in camp, and Sean's, with the playbook now, and we're expecting big things out of Sean. Like, all right, miss me with that.
They're talking about him like a normal dude.
I hope his downfall continues on the downward trajectory that it was on last year into the bottom of the depths of the ocean where he's crushed like that Titanic sub.
Oh, yeah. They certainly had their downfall already. I completely agree with you about Watson. I actually think that he lost his superpowers when he stopped being able to rape women.
Sure, sexually assault people.
I think that took away his ability to play good football because we certainly saw last year when the Browns kept a close eye on things that he sucks now. So cannot wait for him to continue to show that his $240 million fully guaranteed contract that the Browns gave him was like the biggest waste of money of all time. So, or at least in football. I am going to pray for the downfall of one Aaron Rodgers. I don't even really care about the Jets' downfall. Like, they don't bother me. They've never been good, but their fans, I don't get any arguments with any. I've never been in an argument with a Jets. I don't even think I've been in a conversation with a Jets fan. So certainly don't care about their fans, but Rodgers is just, I'm over him. I'm over his deal. I'm over his aura. I'm over his I do ayahuasca with my friends and now I'm good at football. And it's just, I used to be a huge Rodgers fan. I'm still a fan of what he accomplished on the football field as a Green Bay Packer.
Sure.
I think he's an all-timer on the field, but boy, I guess maybe it was just watching more Pat McAfee. I just started watching the show more in general. And so I caught more of Rodgers on the show. And every time I heard him talk, I just liked him less and less. And maybe that's just me being judgmental or whatever. But I don't want this to work with the Jets. I don't want him to walk in and be some MVP candidate for a new AFC team that I have to be annoyed by. That's the other thing is I just don't want another rival. We're good. We they keep popping up. Everybody we got the Jags and we got the Bengals. And we got just stop coming out of the woodwork. Stop bringing in superstar quarterbacks.
Chargers.
They're all too many of them. It's too many rivals. We're done with them. So Jets, Rodgers, get out of here.
I've got two more, and I will go with another team that is. I mean, again, I guess you could argue, as with the Browns, this feels maybe a little bit cruel because this is another team that has never won anything. A team that has never won anything. A team that, if I'm being honest, probably deserves a little bit of luck, but I don't want it. I'm praying for the Chargers' downfall. I just want the Chargers. Listen, again, there is something about the Chargers franchise that needs to stay bad. They need to always be the Chargers. And I know intellectually that they will not always be the Chargers. It is impossible for them to Charger for all time. But I feel like I have to pray for their downfall because if I don't pray for their downfall, eventually, someday, the cosmic forces in the universe will realign. I mean, we've got the additional alien activity and whatever else, whatever it is. If it's increased alien activity in the atmosphere that causes the Chargers to lose their Chargerness, I don't want that to happen. I'm praying for their downfall. I'm praying for the aliens' downfall. I'm praying for all of it because I just want the Chargers to remain the Chargers. I want them to continue to have weird injuries, and I don't wish ill on the players, but it's funny. I mean, those guys are still getting paid millions of dollars.
They're fine. They're not dying out there.
I'm not specifically wishing injury on anybody, but the fact that they have a host of injured players every year is funny in the abstract.
Yes.
Not specific guys or anything like that, but okay, the fact that they commit the boobiest special teams plays of any team that's ever existed in NFL history is hilarious to me. The fact that they were in an overtime game against the Raiders where they needed to tie to make the playoffs just a couple of seasons ago, and they couldn't do it.
Nope.
I mean, that is a team that probably doesn't need me to pray for their downfall, but I'm going to anyway because I just need them to continue where they are right now.
I love it so much. Not to mention even some of the more pass charging, like the 2012 Chargers that had the number one offense and number one defense in the NFL and missed the playoffs. I mean, they are as snake bitten of a franchise as there is. And, if they're not going to charge her, someone has to charge her, and it could be us. So they've got to take the bullet. They've got to take the fall of being the team that all the bad shit happens to so that we can all go on and win Super Bowls and stuff. So, yes, please continue to charge her for all of time. Chargers. I have one more group that I'm praying for their downfall. I'm, of course, talking about the Buffalo Bills. And
sure, of course,
specifically the love fest that was Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, that has now turned into a little bit of a drama fest with Stephon Diggs and not being happy with his role in the offense. And, Buffalo, they had their shot. They were built to win the 2020 or the 2021 Super Bowls. That was they still had Josh Allen relatively cheap for 2020, or they had cheap for 2020. And then they still had superstar pieces around him for 2021. They didn't get the job done. They've never gotten the job done. They never will get the job done. And they will never get the job done because we will continue to pray that they never get the job done. And
our prayers will be answered.
And our prayers will be answered. Bills fans are actually, I've completely come around on them positively.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Compared
we're
to
allied with them
first,
against the Bengals now.
Yes. When Bills fans first showed up, I will admit their whole shtick was annoying. And I didn't like that they seemed like they liked their team more than I like my team. That's kind of the main thing that rubbed me the wrong way. It's like, sure, you think you guys are super fans? I like my team, but I'm not jumping through tables. So does that mean I don't like my team as much as you? It was kind of this.
I'm not going out to the stadium when there's 10 feet of snow on the ground.
Yeah.
They're taking my shirt off and painting my chest. You're too berserk.
Yeah, they were showing us up. But at the same time, you have to respect the passion. You have to respect that they are so sad and that they lost 4 Super Bowls in a row, which is the saddest thing that's ever happened to any sports team ever, by the way. 4 Super Bowl losses in a row without a win before or after it is unconscionable. I cannot imagine that scenario. And yet there are Bills fans somehow.
They live in Buffalo, New York. I mean, that's a harsh climate. Like I said, I mean, it takes a special kind of person to live in upstate New York
to get whittled down to that.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
So really what I'm worried about by praying for their downfall is I'm worried that they're going to win and unleash this holy hell upon everyone else. If the Bills win a Super Bowl, we are in trouble. We're in trouble as an NFL society. We are in trouble dealing with them online because they're so berserk, but it's cute right now. And if they become berserk and annoying, I don't know if we can handle it. I think they might just win the internet and just chew us all out with their craziness. So I am certainly praying that the Bills continue to never win Super Bowls. And that will probably include, Stephon Diggs requesting a trade out or some type of crazy drama. Josh Allen is going to turn into more of the Josh Allen that he was at Wyoming, a turnover machine and a bad elbow and all that stuff. I just go away, Bills, please.
I like that point because I mean, if this is what Bills fans are,
can you imagine
when their team is one of the most snake bitten franchises in the history of the NFL? What do you even jump through after you win the Super Bowl? It's not going to be a folding table. What are these people going to?
It's going to be our homes, Austin. It's going to be bad.
There's literally going to be just a Bills fan jumping out of an airplane without a parachute in a roof.
Yeah,
just
just to do it,
just
to prove that he likes his team more than you do,
just to prove that, and he would prove that.
And he would.
Mean, like if he would be willing, if he would be willing to give his life, for his football team, there's no way that I could compete with that. I like being alive.
Yep.
One last person that I'm praying for their downfall, and this brings me no joy. And I probably should have buried it in the middle. So this one's
not the thing we end on.
It's not like the best one to go out on, but I'm just going to plow ahead with it anyway. I'm praying for Ron Rivera's downfall. And I can spin this. Hold on. I can spin this. I'm not really praying for Ron Rivera's downfall.
Yeah, he has cancer.
So much. Listen, I'm just praying for him to lose his job. And listen, praying for his downfall is a wide term. Like maybe he just decides he wants to spend more time with his family and he decides to call it quits and pass the reins to head coach Eric Bieniemy.
That's good.
That's why I'm paying for Ron Rivera's downfall. Listen, I just want to see EB get a chance to head coach. He's obviously the assistant head coach in Washington now. I like Ron Rivera. He's an Andy Reid guy. He's a cancer survivor. He seems like a good dude.
He does.
But I have to pray for his downfall so that another can rise. And the other that I want to rise is former Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. I just want to see it. I want to see it happen while he's still in the NFC, so that we don't have to deal with the fallout if he turns out to be really good. I don't want him coming back over here to coach the Raiders, the Broncos, or whoever, replacing Sean Payton in a couple of years.
1 year.
So I'm sorry, Ron Rivera. I don't want to downfall you that hard, but I want to downfall you a little bit to bring up EB. It's always sunny. She's going to see you next week.